Welcome, firefighters. What a week it's been, right? I'm so glad you're spending part of your Friday with me. On December 2nd, Fire Drill Fridays is getting back in the streets with an in-person rally in Washington, D.C. at 11 a.m. We're coming together to sound the alarm that we're in a climate emergency and politicians better start acting like it. This will be the first in-person Fire Drill Friday event since COVID-19 required us to do our rallies virtually. It's going to be a big moment, and I hope you'll pack your bags and join me on December 2nd. If you can't make it to DC, don't worry, because we're gonna put it online. You'll be able to find it online. Since we went virtual, you know that we've reached more than 11 million viewers. Isn't that amazing? And we want all of you, the whole firefighter family, with us when we go back into the streets. Whether you come in person or join us over live stream, be sure to sign up at firedrillfridays.com/events. We need your name and how to reach you, and you're not going to want to miss this. There's all kinds of exciting things that are going to happen. Okay, so now let's get into today's topics. Turning out the climate vote. Can you believe it's 18 days until midterm elections? I hope by now that you're registered and are either mailing in your ballot or have a plan for voting on Tuesday, November 8th. The election it's so important and absolutely crucial to our ability to fight the climate crisis. Take a look at some of the lessons we've learned about getting out the climate vote from some of our Fire Drill Friday friends. Derrick Johnson, as you may recall, president and CEO of the NAACP, talks about how getting out the green vote also means getting out the black and brown vote. Let's hear what he has to say.
Let us recognize what the Koch brothers never forget. There is no green vote without the black and brown vote. Now, the phrase white environmentalist rolls off people's tongue, but let's be really clear. The number one demographic of voters to vote for the environment are Latino voters, and the second are black voters. And that is precisely why the Koch brothers, who make their money destroying the planet, have invested so much in suppressing their votes.
As Derrick explained so clearly, our adversaries are well aware that Black and Latino people vote overwhelmingly for the environment, and so they'll do anything they can to suppress these votes. Judith Dianis, executive director of the Advancement Project, explains how they make it difficult for these groups to vote and what each of us can do to make sure that all votes are counted. Let's hear her. What can be done to ensure that people are not unjustly taken off the rolls? And what recourses are there for those who find themselves in this situation?
Purging has always been a tool of the vote suppressors. And especially because while we don't want dead people on the rolls, right? Like, we need to have clean voter rolls so that we can run our elections efficiently. What is also important is that people tend to get purged because especially Black and brown and low income people and students get purged more often because they move more often. And so the people who don't want us to vote know that. And so so we've had some really bad Supreme Court decisions that has opened the floodgates to purging. And so what we need to know, and I want to talk about that Supreme Court, because remember, this connects back to elections. If we don't have a good Senate, then we're going to get bad judges, which means that we're going to lose all these cases. And so what people need to do beyond voting is that we need to make sure that we update our voter registration. This is, we call it kind of like check yourself. And not only that you check yourself to make sure that your address is up to date, but that also, you know, reach out to 20 people that you know, 25 people that you know, ask them to do the same thing, because the effort to make sure that we cannot participate in this election is aggressive. And as you said, they have a lot of money and they're spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to hijack democracy. So it's on us to make sure that we protect ourselves and can participate. Number one, you can sign up with election protection but then you're outside the polling place. If you're a poll worker, right, you also get to administer the election and make sure that things are happening fairly. So being a poll worker and then being a poll watcher. Poll watchers, typically you sign up with your political party to be a poll watcher, or with a candidate to be a poll watcher. And so yes, we need all hands on deck. You can sign up to be, again, poll worker, poll watcher, election protection volunteer. We need everyone to figure out what is the part that you can do to make sure that we are countering the voter suppression effort.
Which of those of possibilities would I want to sign up for so I could keep my eye on monkey business?
Well, Jane, I think you should be inside the polling place, because I could imagine that you would call people out. So I think being, if you feel good enough to mask up and to be protected and safe, because that's number one, is I want you to be safe in whatever volunteering you do. We want you to be safe, because if you don't feel that you can do that, the other thing is being a volunteer to answer the phones for candidates or for election protection is very important, because we need people who can tell us what's happening in the polling place, but also on the other end of that phone, when the voter calls and says, this is what happened to me, we need people to answer those calls so that we can get on the case.
Young people are another group of the majority climate voters. It's their future that's being put at risk, right? However, youth turnout is notoriously low in our elections. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez shares her perspective on why the youth vote matters and how politicians need to be accountable to young people to break the cycle of apathy. Just a few days ago, over 400 people tuned in to watch you play a video game and talk about voting on the social media streaming site Twitch. Do you think that things like that can inspire new audiences to get involved?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think when it's done authentically, it's absolutely so critical that we do this, because I can't tell you how often, I'll be talking to my colleagues in Congress, I'll be talking to other elected officials, and I'm talking about policy that young people care about. And the answer is, young people don't vote, so why should we do anything for an electorate that is unreliable and doesn't turn out? And, it's kind of this cyclical thing, because the reason young people aren't really passionate or supportive of a lot of elected officials is because a lot of elected officials do nothing to address substantively the real material cares that a young electorate is passionate about, whether it's ending our endless wars, whether it's actually solving our student loan debt crisis, whether it's addressing climate change. I believe that it is an elected official's job to reach out first and to not just legislate for whoever votes for them. Yeah. And so, a lot of people said, oh, she's wasting her time by being on a channel that young people are largely on. But guess what? We registered thousands of people to vote in the 3 hours that we were streaming, and thousands more quite likely in the time that people have been watching the replay since. And so, and for a person's first experience with an elected official to be a positive one and not lame, I think is important.
AOC makes such an important point. And speaking of young voters, let's check in with communications expert Anthony Vidal Torres, who witnessing increased voter engagement, not only at the movement level, but also with his friends and family. Let's hear.
This is a moment where we get to really make the future together. And, we have shared stakes and we're leaving it all out on the field. We're doing everything that we can. And that's at the movement level. And I will really want to emphasize that I'm seeing this also everywhere, like in my neighborhood, with my family and friends. Many of my relatives and some of my friends, again, from like high school who I grew up with, are voting for the first time in these elections. I have cousins in Florida who were like, already beat me to it. Like, I'm usually the one in the family who's like, oh, make sure everybody's a voter. And they're like, oh, we already mailed ours in 3 weeks early. We're good.
And finally, Nelini Stamp. Director of Strategy of the Working Families Party, zoom out to provide the big picture of where we're at with the progressive social movements and why we should be optimistic about the future.
Over the last 10 years, I was a part of Occupy Wall Street. Our social movements have grown exponentially, from Not One More to Standing Rock, to Fire Drill Fridays, and all of the things that have come in between, that people have been standing up around issues, and all of us have gotten to know each other more and more through our movements, because we fundamentally believe that that nobody can be free until everybody is free. And so this is also a result of so much movement that has happened in the climate change space, in the immigration space, in the movement for Black Lives space, and more, that people are coming together more and more and more and saying that your liberation is bound with mine. And so that's part of why it was a great grounding to bring us to this moment where we would just want to ensure that every person gets to exercise their rights on election day, and that their votes will be counted beyond.
That was great, wasn't it? I'm certainly feeling inspired and focused at our mission. I hope you are too. So here's what you can do. First, and most importantly, make sure you're registered and ready to vote. Go to firedrillfridays.com/takeaction to see if you're registered to vote at your current address, and to check all the details on how and when you can vote, by mail, in person, or on election day. Second, vote like the planet depends on it. Okay, do your homework so you know who's going to stand up for people on the planet all the way up and down the ballot. Down ballot is so important. These races truly matter and are often decided by a shockingly small number of votes, literally 10, 20, 30 votes. So your vote counts. And you can find out if your candidates have pledged not to take money from oil and gas companies, PACs, or lobbyists at nofossilfuelmoneypledge.org. Third, get out the vote. Voter turnout is crucial, and you can help. We need your help making phone calls or knocking on doors. I know it can be intimidating. I've done it for decades and I still get intimidated. If you've never done it, especially, but it works. It's the most effective way to motivate voters. It's also a great way to build community. Hey, if I can do it, you can too. Just go to firedrillfridays.com/takeaction to get connected to local events near you, to volunteer with others in your community, okay? Thank you all so much for the incredible work you're doing to get out the climate vote. Next week, I'll be coming to you from Texas in the very first Fire Drill Fridays on the Road episode. Tune in for an on-the-ground look at communities who live with fossil fuel extraction and what they're doing about it. You're not going to want to miss this. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next time.